sure they're breathing, make sure they got a pulse, they got a heart rate, check their blood pressure, check their vitals, and remember, check their C-spine. If there is a chance that they've had a C-spine injury, if you don't know anything about them, ambulance just brought them and dropped them off, protect their C-spine. Put a C-collar on, protect their C-spine until you can clinically clear their C-spine. Do you know how to clinically clear their C-spine? Yeah, if you've got a patient who's awake, you can take off their collar and say, hold perfectly still, don't move, and beat up and down their neck and ask them, does this hurt, does this hurt, does this hurt, does this hurt, does this hurt? If they say no, 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 then you say, okay, slowly pick up your head, put your chin to your chest, turn to the right, turn to the left, stop if it hurts. If they can do that, have you heard all this? If they can do all that, then their C-spine is cleared, assuming they're not drunk. They can't be drunk and you can't be on drugs. One other thing you have to assume, and that's that they have no distracting injury. So if they're here with a fractured femur, they might not even know that their neck is broke because their femur hurts so bad. So they can't be drunk, they can't be on drugs, they have to be oriented, and they can't have the distraction. Okay? So have you heard the workup for ultrasound studies? Good. Now there's some fruitful territory. This is a mnemonic that I made up. Anytime I see somebody who is just acting weird, acting goofy, comatose, unconscious, things to think about, the order on these patients. So it's A, B, C, D, E, F, P. A. A stands for an ABG. Maybe you do want to get an ABG, maybe you don't. You can also just consider getting a pulse ox. Maybe that's good enough because you can tell what their percentage of oxygen is. You may want an ABG to find out what their acidosis status is, metabolic acidosis or alkalosis. And the other A is ammonia. If they've got hepatic encephalopathy and their ammonia level is sky high, it's going to make them act just super goofy. But there's no other way to know, and maybe their family's here and says, you know, Dad's an alcoholic. But if you don't have any kind of history, that 1A right there has saved my butt so many times. You get somebody you don't know, get an ammonia level, maybe they've got hepatic encephalopathy, and now you're done, you can be done with it. The B stands for blood alcohol. Maybe they're just drunk. You know, if you drink vodka, you can't smell it on the breath. You can smell just about everything else, but you can't smell vodka on the breath. So maybe they're drunk on vodka, you can't smell it. C stands for a bunch of things. First one is CDC. Maybe they got an H&H that's nothing and nothing, and they're anemic, and that's why they're acting goofy. Maybe they're just super anemic. Another C is chemistries. Maybe they got hyponatremia, hypernatremia. Like my daughter Emily had super goofy mental status with hyponatremia. Carbon monoxide. Maybe they've been exposed to carbon monoxide, and that's why they're acting goofy. Cultures, blood cultures. It's not going to help you or the nurses or anybody you're working with in the ER now, but if they're septic, cultures now are going to help somebody tomorrow or the next day, if you think that's a possibility. Chest x-ray. That was one of the lectures we were going to do today. We're going to look at normal chest x-rays. It's frequently very helpful in somebody with ultrasound status. You may find a pneumonia or a cancer. It's amazing the things you can find in chest x-ray. The last C is CAT scan of the head. And my answer for this, if I ask you, do you want a CAT scan of the head, the answer should typically be, let's wait and see what everything else shows. Because if you just order everything, and they say, well, CAT scan's open, let's go, and they whisk them off to CAT scan, and so it's a $4,000 CAT scan of their head. And while they're gone, their sodium comes back 110. Now you know why they're acting goofy, and you just wasted $4,000 for a CAT scan. So the typical answer for do you want a CAT scan of the head is, well, let's wait and see what comes back. If everything comes back normal, then we'll get a CAT scan. The D stands for drug screen. We're going to look for drugs of abuse, methamphetamines, cocaine, things like that. But also drug levels. If they're on Dilantin, probably going to get a Dilantin level. If they're Dilantin toxic. If they're on phenobarb, you should get a phenobarb level. Maybe they're toxic. Anything that they're on that you can get a level on that can be making them that goofy, then you should do it. which you gotta know what they're on, or you can just start willy-nilly, start ordering a bunch of labs, a bunch of drug levels, but that's gonna cost. E. That's your EKG. This is where you're gonna find out if they are having an MI, if they're having a subarachnoid bleed, if they got a dysrhythmia, if they got a prolonged QT, and just a whole bunch of things you can find with EKG. The F stands for female. If it's a female who's of childbearing age, you want to be sure and get a pregnancy test. You want to make sure you're not treating just one patient, when in fact you may have two patients. And the B stands for two things. Urinalysis. Maybe they got a UTI, maybe they're uroseptic. Maybe they're dehydrated, you can look at their specific gravity. And PB is the elemental sign for lead. If it's a kid who's been eating lead paint, maybe he's having lead poisoning. So something to think about with that. So that's the mnemonic. So now we're going to use it, all right? First patient we're going to use it in is, now. First patient we're going to use is an 82-year-old lady from the nursing home. All right, 82 years old, she's from the nursing home. The nurse who works with her and loves her and lives with her during her shift, 7 days a week, says that Martha's just acting goofy. So they bring her in, and in the ER you do an exam, and she seems like a little demented lady, but the people that know her and love her say that she's acting goofy. You want to get an ABG on her? Most people say no. You want to get a pulse ox? Sure. You get an ammonia level. 50-50. There's no right or wrong answers. If you say yeah, then we'll get it, and we'll see what it is. If she got a history of alcoholism, for sure I'd do it. There's no right or wrong answer. You want to get blood alcohol? Martha from the nursing home? Probably be cost some money, but you could if you want to. Want to get a CBC? Definitely want to get a CBC. Chemistries? Carbon monoxide. Unless she's got her own fireplace in the nursing home, that's probably not going to bear much fruit. Blood cultures? It's a good question. If she's running a fever, then I would. If she's got a CBC with a high white count, then maybe I'd get cultures. If she's got a UTI, then maybe I'd get cultures. Go ahead and get them now, whatever you want. There's no right or wrong. Again, chest x-ray, got to get her chest x-ray. She can have pneumonia. Cat's out of that. Wait and see what. All right, we want to get a drug screen. We're just going to willy-nilly look for meth and coke and marijuana. Probably. But levels. We want to look at her medication list and see if there's anything on her medication list that we need to get levels of. Right? Okay. EKG. You guys want to get EKG on? Yeah. Pregnancy test? Urinalysis? Yes. Absolutely. A lead level?
No. Unless she's been eating the walls.
She's been eating the walls. Probably not pretty cool to get lead levels. All right, so we'll flip it over. Now it's a 19-year-old female who is an IV drug user. She's found unconscious in her apartment. They bring her in, and in fact, she is unconscious and unresponsive. Do you want an ABG? Who does? Most. Or just a pulse ox. Everybody wants a pulse ox. Ammonia level? She could be an alcoholic, I don't know. Up to you. Want to get a blood alcohol on her? Yeah. She's an IV drug abuser, she could be a drunk too. It's not going to hurt to get a blood alcohol. If you don't, I'm probably not going to hold her. Want a CBC? I'll give you the CBC.
Anemia?
Maybe she got an endocarditis, maybe she's septic. Maybe she's anemic, maybe she hasn't eaten in a long time. Chemistries? Carbon monoxide.
Yeah. I know environment.
She came from her apartment.
Sure.
I didn't order that. You know, it's actually a carboxyhemoglobin. The books all say it has to be an arterial stick, but really you can get a venous stick. You don't have to stick them in. All right, you want to see good cultures? What cultures?
Yeah, she's IV drug abuser.
Yeah.
Most classes say yes, because of the possibility of endocarditis and sepsis. Remember, she's been sticking needles in her arms. If you don't want to, that's all right. Chest x-ray.
No.
CAT scan of the head. Wait.
Unless she-
However, at least twice a year when I was working, at least twice a year I had somebody who was doing meth and had a cerebral bleed as a result of the meth. The blood pressure goes up. It always shocked me because here's this 20-year-old druggie that had a hip. So I'm more liberal with ordering a CAT scan. Okay, willy-nilly, do we just want to look for coke and meth in marijuana? I guess most people would say yes on that. Willy-nilly, do we just want to order lithium and dilantin and phenobarb because we don't know anything about her? You could, but that's kind of a waste of money. EKG? Remember, she could have endocarditis. That's a big thing with drug abusers and drug abusers. Pregnancy test.
Yes.
Urinalysis. Blood level. Okay. What's that? It's not easy. We'll go like this. You read it? Am I right big enough?
Just wondering.
All right, so here's your results. Blood gas, pH is 7.12, PCO2 is 32, bicarb is 6, O2 is 148, 100% saturation. White count is 15.6, hemoglobin 14.2, pneumatic at 38.1, platelets 156,000. Sodium is 138, potassium is 4, chloride 105, bicarb is 6, heme is 21, creatinine is 0.2, glucose is 148. Yes, for blood alcohol too. And it was 0.8. Urinalysis has specific red of 1010, 2 to 3 whites, 2 to 3 reds, 2 to 3 eppies, 2 to 3 calcium oxalate crystals, and 2 to 3 waxy cast and granular cast. And our HCG.
I have a question.
Yes.
Would you ever just do like a quick finger stick blood glucose in
Yes.
there anywhere? Okay.
Almost always.
Okay.
Because you can, the question was, would you ever just do a quick finger stick blood sugar? Almost always.
Okay.
And the reason is, if that's all it is,
Right.
you can be done. And that brings up another mnemonic that I forgot to tell you. Can I put it over here? I think you've probably seen this. Have you seen this? Don't forget. So if you, the very first thing, I'm glad you brought that up, the very first thing you should do, besides your physical, is don't forget. Think about dextrose. If they're hypoglycemic and you give them some sugar, you can be done. So just get a fingerstick blood sugar. If that's not available, give them an amp of sugar. It's not going to hurt them. Even if they're in DKA, it's not going to hurt them. Oxygen. If they're hypoxic, a little oxygen is going to wake them right up and you can forget all of this other crap. And it's Narcan. If they've overdosed on narcotics, you can give them some Narcan and they'll wake right up and be very mad at you for ruining their high. T is thiamine. If they got Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome from being an alcoholic, you can give them thiamine and fix that right away. And the F stands for flumezine. Now notice everything that I've said so far is give it to them, who cares? Give it to them, who cares? That's not true for flumazenil, or the trade name is Romazicon. If you want the mnemonic, don't remember or don't forget. Flumazenil or Romazicon. It's the antagonist to benzodiazepines. For some reason, people tend to overdose on benzodiazepines and tricyclics at the same time. So take a handful of tricyclics and a handful of benzos and swallow. A handful of tricyclics is gonna make you seize. A handful of Valium is not gonna make you seize. So here you come and you give them flumazenil, antagonize the Valium, and what happens?
Start seizing.
They're gonna start seizing. So it's a relative contraindication. If you know or suspect they took a concomitant overdose of a tricyclic, you probably shouldn't give them flumazenil for overdose. Okay? So what's this lady? Her answer is up there.
An acidosis. An acidosis?
So you got an acidosis, very good. 7.12, is it, first thing you should ask yourself, is it a metabolic acidosis or a respiratory acidosis?
What's her O2?
Well, her PCO2 is 32. Bicarb is 6.
It's probably metabolic.
So metabolic acidosis or respiratory acidosis?
I think it's metabolic.
It's a metabolic acidosis. You gotta know that. You gotta know. But a bicarb of 6, it's a metabolic acidosis. So what you got? I'm here for you. I'll tell you.
Oh yeah, it's HCG positive.
What's our anion gap? You guys know what the anion gap is? Have you heard of it? Anion gap is the positives of the electrolytes minus the negatives. So the positives are over here, 138 sodium and 4 potassium. Potassium's always 3, 4, 5. So we just cancel it out, just forget that. So it's the positives minus the negatives. The negatives are chloride and the bicarb. So 138 minus 111. How much is that? 27. So our anion gap is 27. Normal anion gap is 12. So anytime you make the diagnosis of metabolic acidosis, the very first thing you should say is an anion gap acidosis or a non-anion gap acidosis. This is an anion gap acidosis. And the reason that's important is there's another mnemonic that'll tell you what it is. Just gonna keep going if I need to go to the bathroom. Mnemonic is a mud piles cat. You'll hear mud piles, you'll hear Elm Park, mud pile cat. The one that I use is a mud piles cat because it takes care of everything. So let's talk about, we know that she's got a metabolic acidosis, positive anion gap. So we know she's got one of these things. That's really, really cool. Let's talk about what they are. What's the A?
Anemia.
Alcoholic ketoacidosis. So I didn't come prepared to do this right. So it's alcoholic ketoacidosis. So somebody who's an alcoholic, they're not eating like they should, they're not getting nourishment, they're not getting their vitamins, they're getting ketotic. They're going to have a metabolic acidosis, anion gap type, just because they're not getting their proper nutrition. Alcohol does not cause a metabolic gap acidosis. It does not cause a gap acidosis, alcohol itself. But it's the resultant condition, being malnourished and dehydrated, that can cause it. Okay, so alcoholic ketoacidosis. So how can we test for that? We can look in the urine and see if there's ketones. We can look at liver enzymes and see if there's a history of liver enzymes being up. You can see, there's all kinds of markers you can see if the person's an alcoholic. Yeah, that's methanol. How are we going to tell if the patient has overdosed on methanol? Usually somebody yells out, we'll get a methanol one. But the answer is, okay, that'll be back on Friday, because it's typically not something you do. Anybody know how we did a methanol level? There's a mnemonic.
They would be blind.
Oh, she was right.
Isn't methanol?
So you order an osmolar gap. You guys know what that is?
A what?
Osmolar gap. You order an osmolar gap. So you call up the lab and say, hey, this 19-year-old female in here, I need an osmolar gap. They say, okay. 5 minutes later, they call you back and say, hey, it's 300. How'd they do that so fast? They didn't even come and get blood. Well, they already have blood up there. So here's how they do it. The osmolar gap. It's calculated. And it's just a simple formula. It's 2 times the sodium plus the glucose over 18 plus BUN over 2.8 plus BTOH over 4.3. 2 times the sodium plus glucose over 18 plus BUN over 2.8 plus BTOH over 4.3. All they do is plug it into a calculator. And they say, okay, your answer is 300. Great. Now you gotta call next. I didn't really want to calculate it. I want to measure it. And they hate you for that because it's a hard test. There's 2 ways to measure the osmolality. They can do freezing point depression, or they can do boiling point. What do you think they like? They like the boiling point because it's easier. Unfortunately, that's not going to work. It has to be freezing point depression. So you made them mad by telling them you want to measure it. You made them double mad by saying, I want you to measure it by freezing point. So they get all mad. They do it. They measure freezing point depression, and guess what? It comes back 450. So calculated was 300. Measured was 450. That's an osmolar gap of 150. What causes that? Methanol. Everybody with me? And if you're going through and checking my calculations, 2 times the sodium plus glucose over 18, it may not come to 300. I'm just kind of talking about the normal osmolality is 300. Anything over that is considered a gap if it's measured high and they calculate it as low. Another M that fits into this mnemonic is metformin. One of the diabetes drugs, right? And it causes lactic acidosis. And lactic acidosis can cause anti-acidosis. Uremia. How are we going to tell if this girl has uremia? Look at a BU and a creatinine. Her BU and a creatinine are fine. She doesn't have uremia. Right? D. DKA. How can we tell if she's got DKA?
Too
Yeah,
small.
look at her glucose. Her glucose should be sky high. She should have serum ketones and urine ketones. No, she doesn't have any ketones in her urine. She doesn't have DKA. B. B stands for 2 things. It's fenformin, which is another diabetes agent like metformin, but nobody uses it anymore. And the other P is formaldehyde. It's an agent that they used to use for anesthesia, but they don't use it anymore either. But if you're on our rotations and they ask you what causes an anti-gap acidosis, you're supposed to know formaldehyde and fenformin. You're just supposed to know that. Okay? I. INH, isoniazid. How are we going to tell if she is overdosed on isoniazid? That's the drug that they use for tuberculosis. So unless somebody comes in and says, oh yeah, that girl's got tuberculosis, you may never ever know. You can get a chest x-ray and look at the apices, look for goobers in her chest x-ray at the apex, and maybe see that she's got tuberculosis, and therefore she's potentially on INH and overdosed. Otherwise, it's just hopeful that somebody comes and tells you, or you find a bottle in her purse. Other I is iron. We used to see this all the time. Kids coming in, they ate their mom's multivitamins with iron. They were feeding her vitamins with iron. How are we going to tell if the kid, or if this lady overdosed on iron? It's really easy. You got to order an iron level and a TIBC, total iron binding capacity. If the iron level exceeds the TIBC, then they've overdosed on it. L, lactic acidosis. This is the flying away. Remember I said, we know she's got one of these things, but one of these things is lactic acidosis. And what causes that? There's a whole bunch of things that cause that. Metformin can cause that, fenformin can cause that, bowel ischemia, bowel sepsis. There's a whole bunch of things that can cause lactic acidosis. So you have to get a lactic acid level. If that comes back positive, now you've really got some work to figure out where the lactic acid is coming from. E. ethylene glycol. This is the active ingredient in antifreeze. How are we going to tell if they've got that? We say we get an ethylene glycol level, but that'll be back on Friday. You do the same thing as a methanol. You do an osmolarity. You get a calculated osmolarity and a measured osmolarity. And if there's a gap, that's from either methanol or ethylene glycol. Another cool thing about ethylene glycol, if you watch House ever, is it's what's in antifreeze. They put fluorescein in antifreeze. That's stuff that you put in the eyes to look for corneal abrasions. They put it in antifreeze. And the reason they do is when you pull in with your car to Firestone and say, I think I'm leaking antifreeze, they'll just go on your car with a black light, see where it's glowing. And that's because the antifreeze glows under the black light. And that's how they know where to fix where the leak is. If your patient overdoses on antifreeze, their urine will glow under the black light. This S is starvation ketosis. So this is going to be somebody that's got ketones, they got a history of trying to lose weight, they've been on a drastic diet. It should be pretty easy to figure this out. Again, this lady doesn't have ketones, so it's probably not that. C, cyanide. How are we going to tell if she took cyanide or somebody gave her cyanide? Does anybody know? The only one way to tell really quickly is they have on their breath the smell of bitter almonds. Bitter almonds. So you get down in their nose, in their face, and you smell the breath, and they smell like bitter almonds. And only about 2/3 of the people in the world can smell the bitter almonds. So pretty much she's going to die. If you can find that they did actually overdose on cyanide, it's pretty easily and quickly treated if you know how to treat it, but that's comes up next. The A is aspirin. How are we going to tell if she overdosed on aspirin? You get an aspirin level. That's easy enough. You get an aspirin level and see what it is. And T is toluene. That's the active ingredient in paint and in whiteout. So these huffers, they'll go by gold paint. Gold paint has got the most concentrated toluene. So the way the huffers do it, in case you don't know, is they'll buy a can of gold paint. That's why you go to Walmart and try to buy paint. They want to see your ID and make sure you're over 18. But they'll spray the gold paint into a brown paper bag and then they'll huff the toluene, leaving gold paint all around their mouth and their lips. It's pretty easy to tell that's what they've been doing because they've got gold paint on their face. Gold paint is frequently sold out at Walmart. Next up is silver. Silver has a lot of toluene, not as much as gold, but silver's got a lot of toluene too. So how can we tell if that's what she did? She doesn't have any paint around her face. She doesn't have any whiteout around her face, so it's probably not there. Okay? I've only got about 10 minutes. Can I just keep going? And then we'll just go home. So that's how we know that. So now let's go back through the list. And I'll tell you what she's got. Now you should have known this is what she's got. Anybody know what she's got yet? Alcoholic ketoacidosis? There was no ketones in her urine.
Oh, yeah. But you give us a blood alcohol, 0.8.
What causes
Yeah, 0.8 is
That's
really not
unbelievable.
one. It takes
0.08.
0.08.
Yeah, she's 10 times legal.
I might have missed a zero.
Okay.
Good call. I might have missed a zero. All right, go back to alcoholic ketoacidosis. If that's what she's got, how are we going to treat that? That's easy. We just give them IV fluid, give them some nourishment, give them some multivitamins, what they call a banana bag with thiamine and magnesium and all that stuff, and she'll get better. Methanol. What if she overdosed on methanol? Maybe how are we going to treat that?
Test her eyesight.
Everybody at once now. Yes. So methanol, you need to know this, methanol itself is not toxic. It's not a big deal. It's just one of the alcohols is not a big deal. People drink it, homeless people get sterno, and they'll drink it because they're going to get drunk. But what they don't realize is that methanol is metabolized to formic acid, which is very, very dangerous and which will kill you. It destroys the macula. So we see a lot of homeless guys who've been drinking sterno and they walk around, they're blind because the methanol that they drink turned to formic acid and destroyed the macula. So the way we treat them is we stop this conversion from methanol to formic acid. And what happens is, dehydrogenase. So from methanol to formic acid, it uses alcohol dehydrogenase. Yes?
What if it's already all converted to formic acid? Is it just too late? Or-
For the most part, you still gotta go to dialysis.
Okay.
But now, if it's already converted, all this formic acid is circulating around and it is causing all kinds of damage. But you can get rid of it with dialysis. So that's the next step. Yeah, that's my second, that's the next step. The first step is to prevent this from going from methanol to formic acid, and that's by giving them alcohol, ETOH. Alcohol will preferentially tie up all that alcohol dehydrogenase. So if alcohol dehydrogenase can't work on methanol because it's working on the alcohol you gave them, now you can take them to dialysis and get rid of all the methanol. So how much alcohol do you give them? You want them to give you 1.5 times stronger, so a level of about 1/5. In a lot of ERs, you can just hook up an IV alcohol drip. In a lot of alcohols, they don't. In a lot of ERs, they don't have that at all. In small rural Oklahoma, rural Texas, rural Kansas, they go to a liquor store and they get some whiskey, they get some beer, and have them start drinking. Because as long as you get them 1.5 times drunk, that's all it takes. And there's a drug called fomepizole. Fomepizole does the same thing that alcohol does. It ties up the alcohol dehydrogenase, but it's real expensive. So you still have to take them to dialysis to get rid of the methanol. And you have to understand, this is a place where a lot of people make a mistake. When you hook them up to dialysis, you're dialyzing off the methanol, but you're also dialyzing off the ethanol. So you gotta turn up their alcohol. You gotta get them more drunk during dialysis to make sure you don't dialyze off their ethanol. If you dialyze all their alcohol off, suddenly methanol is gonna start being converted to formic acid.
Would you use a special acid bath since they're already in an acidosis, or like extra bicarb or anything for the dialysis?
No, not that I'm aware of, no. As long as you can keep the methanol from being converted, you're good. But, man, you just my perfect segue. There is something we're going to use bicarb for, that's coming up. So already got that? We're going to prevent methanol from going to formic acid. We're going to get rid of this by dialysis, and we're going to make sure that we turn up the alcohol or have them drink more whiskey to make sure that their level doesn't go below 150. Uremia. If they've got that, that's easy. Just put them in, you call nephrology or internal medicine, let them do it. DKA. They've got that, how do we treat them? Surely you know this. It's a whole bunch of IV fluids. You gotta give them bicarb, you gotta give them insulin. If you're seeing a test question or a board question, it's a famous board question, you got somebody in DKA and you're only allowed to give them one thing. The answer is fluids, IV fluids. And clearly they're gonna need sodium, chloride, they're gonna need insulin. They're also going to need potassium. A lot of people forget that as they pee out all that glucose, they're sucking potassium with them. And their potassium levels, that's a whole other lecture, I should probably look into.
Somebody else will do that.
Their potassium levels are falsely elevated or falsely normal because of the acidosis. They're sucking the potassium out of the cell. So we come and treat it, potassium goes back into the cell, and now they're hypokalemic and in danger. INH. If we find out I got overdosed on INH, how would we treat that? There's a mnemonic for that. Promise, I'm almost done. Split C. This is everything that requires bicarb. Salicylates. If a patient is overdosed on salicylates, aspirin products, they need a bicarb drip. P is phenobarb. If they've overdosed on phenobarb, they need a bicarb drip. L is lithium. Same thing. I is INH. Also iron. But really what they do is, when they find out that you've overdosed on iron, they will give you a chelating agent, desferoxamine, And if they lavage your stomach out, they use a bicarb solution to lavage your stomach out. They don't actually get bicarb IV. But one important point about here. So INH requires bicarb. You give them bicarb to get them alkalotic, but they still have seizures. Anybody know how to treat that? It's just one of those things you have to know and remember forever. Tim, you probably don't remember it either. What do you give them? INH, and it's a board question always. It's vitamin B6, pure dioxin. Who knows why? I don't know, but I always remember to tell you. If you have a patient who overdosed on isoniazid and they're seizing, give them vitamin B6 for whatever reason. The T is tricyclics. If you only remember one thing from my hour and a half here today, remember this, bicarb for tricyclics. If you have a patient, and you're going to have a lot of patients who overdose on tricyclics, you have a patient who overdose on tricyclics and they're in VFib. You can shock them, shock them, shock them, shock them, shock them. But until you give them bicarb, it won't get better. If they're seizing, you can give them Valium, Versed, anything you want, but until they get bicarb, it's not going to get better. Am I saying something anti-group? Bicarb is the panacea for tricyclics. It's going to fix just about anything with tricyclics. And the C is cocaine. They get bicarb as well. All right, I'm down to lactic acidosis. If that's what she's got, we've got to figure out where it's coming from. We can treat the bowel ischemia, we can treat the sepsis, we can treat the infarct, whatever it is, we have to identify and treat that. So that's the flying one. Ethylene glycol. How would we treat that? It's exactly the same as methanol, except plug in, instead of methanol, plug in ethylene glycol. Utilizes alcohol dehydrogenase, and it comes into hippuric acid. Instead of formic acid, it's hippuric acid, and that typically causes calcium oxalate crystals in the urine, which I erased, but that's what she had. She had calcium oxalate crystals in the urine. So that's what happened to her. She overdosed on animals. Same treatment, you got to give them alcohol or fomepizole to tie up all the alcohol dehydrogenase. Still got to go to dialysis, just like before. All right? Starvation ketosis. If she's got that, you're going to get a cheeseburger and she'll be fine. Cyanide. How are we going to treat cyanide? I actually had a PowerPoint for this, but I can just tell you. Mnemonic that everybody remembers, all the ER people remember, for a cyanide overdose and how to treat it is try, and leave it up to fate. Try, leave it up to fate. And it's an alphabetical order. So it's called the Lilly cyanide kit. And the first thing you give them is amyl nitrite. Try, amyl nitrite. And then sodium nitrite. Another try. And then sodium thiosulfate. And that's what comes in the Lilly cyanide kit. You got to give them in that order. Amyl nitrite, sodium nitrite, and sodium thiosulfate. So try, and leave it up to fate. Aspirin. She's overdosed on aspirin. How will we fix that? Somebody. Bicarb. How do they die with an aspirin overdose? If they have a really big aspirin overdose, they typically will go into pulmonary edema. My first death as a real doctor outside of residency was a young teenager who overdosed on aspirin and had pulmonary edema. I'll never forget that. In toluene, supportive care, there's really nothing big to do for them. Oh, the magic of 140. Has anybody taught you this? This would be my last thing. 140. It's kind of a magical number in the ER, a number you need to remember. We see a ton of people that are suicidal. Are they really suicidal, or are they just making a suicidal gesture? You know, they'll come in with cuts on their arms, and they'll say, I was just silly, I was just seeking attention, I'm trying to get attention from my boyfriend or my girlfriend, I'm really not suicidal, just let me go, okay, you're fine, just go. But it took a bottle of Tylenol, and that's the deal. A Tylenol overdose causes no clinical symptoms at all until you start to die. So 3 days from now, he starts to die. And you're the last person that saw him in the ER with those little cuts on his arm. You said, oh, your tetanus status is up to date, good, go home. huge danger because Tylenol is everywhere. It's in every 7-Eleven and every Quick Trip and every Homeland. You can get Tylenol in so many different products. And somebody who was smart would overdose on that. If they really want to kill themselves, overdose on that, and not tell anybody, and then go to the ER and have the ER send them home. And then they die, and that was a huge malpractice lawsuit because they didn't catch it. You have to get a Tylenol level on anybody who's suicidal. You have to do it. If there's any chance that they're suicidal, you have to get a Tylenol. And 140 is the number. So what's special about 140? If their level of Tylenol in their system at 4 hours, now a lot of times you don't know when they took it. Or sometimes they took extended release. They've been taking extended release for a long, long time. They have a dome nomogram that helps you, but really, there's no way to know if they're taking extended release products or if they've been taking it over a long period of time. 140 at 4 hours. If you can figure out when they should have peaked and when 4 hours is from the last time they took it, if their level is 140 or higher, they're toxic and they have to be treated. If somebody comes in with a bottle that says, he took this, and you got the bottle of Tylenol right there, if they took 140 milligrams per kilogram, they're toxic. They need to be treated. Yes?
Would it cause their ammonia level to go up as well yet?
Ammonia level?
Yeah,
Well, yeah, eventually as the liver starts to die.
okay. But it wouldn't be
not
high?
initially, no. Initially, there's no, what they call, it's called a toxidrome. There's no toxidrome. You tell me somebody overdosed on aspirin, I can tell you what to find physically. You tell me they overdosed on cocaine, I can tell you what to look for in a physical. You tell me they overdosed on tricyclic overdoses, I can tell you what to look for. You should see tachycardia, hypertension, white QRS tachycardia, elevated AVR, R prime and AVR. It's a whole bunch of things that go with each thing you say they overdosed on. I can say, okay, this is what you should find. But with Tylenol, the only thing I can say you should find is an elevated Tylenol level. And they're going to die in 3 days if you don't find it. So super, super critical. So say they do have a level of 140 or higher, or by history they did take 140 milligrams per kilogram by history, what's the antidote? Eucharist. N-acetylcysteine, what's the dose?
140?
Take a wild guess.
140?
140 milligrams per kilogram for their first dose. And then it's half that for 17 more doses. So you can see why 140 is pretty important. I also remember 140 as kind of a level for aspirin. If their level is 140 or double, maybe 280, that's kind of a big deal. But it's hard and fast for 140 for Tylenol. All right, any questions about any of that? Sorry, I didn't come prepared to talk about this, but I have done it a couple of times. All right, Tammy, I guess we'll figure out when I'm coming back.
Yes, we will. And I will adjust everything. I've actually got an old handout from past records that I would have you look at that's actually got a lot of this, that I will adjust and forward